Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to our Friday night virtual halaqa. Tonight we have Dr. Salim Khanani, who doesn't need introduction in our community in Worcester, Massachusetts. He is not only a medical doctor, but he is extremely active in community activists, involved in different interfaith program, khatibs, and he have been in the academic sciences of Islam also for last a decade or so. And first, I would like to welcome him, Dr. Salim. How are you doing?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan for asking me to come and talk to you and learn from you.
No, Dr. Salim, you are very humble. So, Dr. Salim, I know you are in this community for a long time. When I was maybe a kid, so I thought that you would be a best person who know the dynamics of the community, who have studied Islamic academic, and at the same time who have the experience in outreach work in Worcester and larger Worcester Muslim community. Let me start with this. There is a controversy in an American Muslim community, and it is increasing day by day. That there is a group of Muslim who say that there should not be any interfaith because their definition of interfaith is that when you say all the religions are one, there is no inna deen inda Allahil Islam. The other groups say no. There is a way you define interfaith. There is a need for dialogue. So my first question to you, with your experience, Dr. Salim, how do you define interfaith?
I think before we define interfaith, let's define faith.
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
I think let's go with the dictionary definition of the word faith. Because obviously the Quranic terminology is iman. It is not. When we talk about the faith, obviously we have to use the language of the time and a language that people can understand. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, we did not send a messenger to any community except they spoke in their language. So I think there's an emphasis on the language as well. There are nuances and subtleties of language, and sometimes understanding of a particular word in a different language creates confusion.
Yeah, I understand.
Maybe behind what some people have a feeling or a concept of interfaith. So now faith, if you go with the dictionary, it says a state or habit of mind in which a person places trust or confidence in something. Okay, so it becomes like a personal definition, a subjective view of something.
If we and you're explaining faith, not iman, right? It means we're giving English definition of English faith, word faith, right?
Definition of faith.
Okay.
Now, if we look at the word iman, the root word of iman is amn. Okay, and amn also means security, trust. So when we say that iman, we define the way Quran defines, then I'll go with that. But basically what it means is that you put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You put your trust in a power which is beyond your grasp, beyond your comprehension, but who controls and administers the entire universe. And you feel security that once you have put your matters into the hands of that power, he will not let you loose. He will control you. He will save you. He will protect you.
Yeah.
Now, the Quranic definition of iman, if we go with Surah Al-Baqarah, آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله. Right. And then if we go forward, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it talks about إن الذين آمنوا والذين هادوا والنصارى والصابئين من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر وعمل صالحا. I think there is an extension here that Iman Billah also requires belief in the hereafter, which means the accountability, the resurrection, and doing good deeds. Okay. Now, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressed these communities, then I think that he, in a way, in my understanding, he's defining who are the people of the faith. Okay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Islam, I believe, in the dina in the lahil Islam. And you can take a Shari definition of Islam.
By the way, can you translate for our audience in the easy translation in the dina in the lahil Islam? I didn't do it, so maybe you should do it.
Okay, that indeed the religion for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Islam. Now you can define the word Islam in its linguistic way, or in according to the hadith of Jibril alayhi salatu wasalam, where the Prophet defined Islam as the 5 pillars of Islam, basically. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in the dina in the lahil Islam, it's like for eternity, Islam has been the religion. The Sharia can be different. So we cannot say that Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was not a Muslim, he was a Jew, or Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam was Yahudi or Jew, or Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was a Christian. They were all Muslims in the broadest definition of the word Islam, which means submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. We also know that there are people who came between the Prophet ﷺ and between Isa ﷺ and the Prophet ﷺ, the Fatratul Rusul, 500, 700, 600 years. And there were many people who did not get the message of even Isa ﷺ, or between Musa ﷺ and Isa ﷺ. So how do you explain that those people to whom the message, the divine message through a prophet did not come, what would happen to them? Okay. So that's one key aspect to keep in mind. I will not dwell upon it further. But interfaith, when I talk about interfaith, is that you maintain your identity as Muslims who are belonging to the Prophet, to the Ummah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who believe in all the components of Islam and Iman given to us by our Sharia, who hold on to that belief, who are not shaky. But at the same time, we have to realize that this Ummah that we are currently living, all of them, whether they are believers or non-believers, are from the Ummah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And I will mention a hadith. Ma min ummati, Yahudiyan or Nasraniyan, sami'a bi wa lam yu'min bi. I will not go into the detail. But in that hadith, the Prophet is talking about his Ummah because there is no other prophet to come after him. So everyone who has come after him is belonging to his Ummah, and we can divide the Ummah into two parts. The Ummah, which is Ijabiyah, who responded to his call and became Muslims, and the Ummah to whom his message was conveyed by him and will be conveyed to them till the last day through the believers in Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay. If we look at it this way, that people who believe in a divinely revealed scripture, who have a shir'atan wa minhaja, who have a sharia of their own, you can say, who follow a certain path of life, isn't it our responsibility as the followers of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to convey the message to them? So no prophet is supposed to come. So interfaith to me is when we mingle with people who have any ideology, any belief, and I will even go to the extent of saying even atheist. Isn't it my responsibility and your responsibility to convey the message of Islam to them?
So it's more like a dawa work you were talking about.
Absolutely, I'm talking about dawa work, but not dawa in a polemical manner. Now, when I went to England for the first time, we have a place called Hyde Park in London.
Okay.
Sunday morning, anybody can go and talk and speak anything they want. And my first experience was when I went there, an African-American person was engaged in fighting with non-Muslims, quoting from their book. You have a different style. Ahmad Didat has his own style. Zakir Naik has his own style.
Naik, I understand.
Okay. My style is not polemical style where I say I'm superior and everybody else is wrong. No, my truth, for me, that Allah is one and Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is his last prophet, is the absolute truth. But my absolute truth is not necessarily the absolute truth of somebody else. And somebody else's absolute truth is not my truth. We can argue on that. But when I invite a person to come to me, I'm actually acting upon what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal mau'izatil hasana, and qul ya ahlal kitabi ta'alu ila kalimatin sawain bainana wa bainakum. Okay. So based upon those two principles, my idea is to bring them to our masjid, to our community, and to reach out to them and tell them what our religion says. Now, I'm kind of elaborating a little bit more. How did it start? Okay, in our community. So I will give credit to people who have come before me who are still engaged in it, Dr. Riyad Khan, Dr. Stephen Shakir, and Dr. Muhammad Lazuni. They have been involved way before I came.
Do you know when it was 80s or 90s when they were initiated?
Muhammad Lazuni came in 1989. Stephen Shakir has been here even before ISTW was established. And so is Dr. Riyad Khan. Right. Now, in 2001, when 9/11 happened, I was the president of ISTW at that time. And I was bombarded with radio hosts, TV stations, schools, colleges, libraries, churches, synagogues, what's going on. And I realized at that time that an average Muslim doesn't know much about Christianity and Judaism and doesn't know much about Islam. And similarly, an average Christian or Jew does not know much about his own religion, let alone about Islam. In fact,
Yeah.
it says Islam was a stranger, the gharib, the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned, Badawul Islam ghariban. It was actually a very gharib. And when I was approached, I said, okay, I will go to church. And I went to several churches. We arranged programs in local libraries. We distributed 500 copies of an English translation of Quran. And
Wow.
established such a bond that actually people started to invite us to give lectures and talks in schools and colleges and brought
Wow.
the students to the masjid. And I say, maybe there is a blessing in disguise in 9/11. It's waking up the Muslims. But then I realized, Imam Asif, that, okay, I go to a Jew and say, brother, here is Quran, final revelation, the book of Allah. Read it. It will save you. And if you've turned to me and said, have you read Torah? I said, I'm not going to read Torah. How am I going to convince him to read the Quran? And I will give you 3 examples. People ask me, and even my children sometimes argue with me, what have you achieved? Okay. So now my idea was that, okay, Dr. Lazuni and Dr. Riyad Khan and Stephen Shagir have been engaged and they had their own way of doing it. My way was that, okay, they have invited me to the church. Shouldn't I bring them to the masjid? Shouldn't they see and look at the Muslims from inside? We are not a cult followers. We are not engaged in any satanical sort of ritual. We are open, our doors are open to anybody who can come to the house of the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we'll go back to that. So I said, why don't I formalize it? Okay. We have been doing it without any organization. From time to time, somebody may come and visit. So I said, let me do a program that every Ramadan, I will invite them on the last Sunday of the month. They will come. We will give them the opportunity. And I will give you how it happened. So there is a church next to ISTW. It's a Greek Orthodox church. So I went to invite them. That we are your neighbors and we are having a program. Would you like to come? And say, for what? And my answer was, so that I can listen to you. He immediately calmed. If I told him so that you can listen to me, what would have been his response? So I said, okay, let's ta'aluk ila kalimatin sawaim bainana wa bainakum. Okay.
Yeah.
So I choose topics which are common to all 3 religions. And it's not polemical, it's not critical, it's not even, you can say, that missionary in a way. Okay, so you have attended one of our program on Surah.
Couple of them, yeah.
So we choose a topic which is common, and I will tell you, Imam, and that's why I told my children, have I succeeded or not. In that program on Surah Yusuf, one of the rabbi, Rachel Gurvich, she said, for the first time in my life, I read the Quran.
Oh, wow.
She read the tafsir of Surah Yusuf from the Quran, a rabbi reading Quran for the first time. And I could have told them that I read more from Torah than you have read from the Quran. Okay. So after that program, you know what happened? They invited me and say, they have a program every year. They call it Torathon. So it's like marathon is Torathon. So they say, we would like to invite you to come and teach us something from the Quran. And I said, okay, why don't we take the topic of Habil and Qabil, Cain and Abel from the Quran?
Yeah.
So Imam, I went there and I did something different. I took with me a translation and commentary of Quran written by an Orientalist, Gabriel Said Reynolds. It's a comparative study of Quran and Bible. So it's actually the whole Quran translated with commentary and with cross-references to Old Testament and New Testament. So I gave them a philosophical interpretation. I gave them the interpretation from the Bible and from the Quran. At the end of it, the rabbi comes to me and says, can you give me the name of that book? And then other people started coming and saying, no, how should we start studying the Quran? From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya ayyuhar rasul balligh ma unzila ilayk. And wama anta alayhim bihafiz. We have not made you a guardian for them. My responsibility is to convey the message. My responsibility is not to compel anybody to become a Muslim. La ikraha fid din. Qad tabayyana rushdu min al-ghayy.
Yeah.
So I talk to people that, don't expect me that I will start converting people to Islam. If I can change their outlook about the Muslims, like Muallafat Qulubum, as you discussed, if I can make them at least look at the Quran, if I can bring them to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillah, over the last 10 years, we started out with 10 people. Now we have 250 people coming from different kinds of faith, even atheists coming. We engage in a discussion for about an hour and a half. At the end of it, with sunset, we break our fast. They watch us pray. Some of them actually join with us.
Dr. Salim, you're breaking up. Dr. Salim, you're breaking up.
The prayer. Some of them actually with us.
Yeah, now it's better. Dr. Salim, you're mute now. Can you unmute yourself, Dr. Salim? Dr. Salim, can you unmute yourself? I guess there is a technical difficulty. Dr. Salim is trying to figure out. Yes, Dr. Salim.
Can you hear me now?
Assalamualaikum, Noman. Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I can hear you, Dr. Salim.
Okay. So the objective, if you ask me, is not to engage into any argument. You know, وَلَا تُجَادِلْهُمْ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ.
So,
can you hear me?
Yeah, Dr. Salim, I can hear you. So, Dr. Salim, now my question to you is, so basically what you are saying that giving dawah, having business relationship with the clergy members of the places of worship, outreach work, these all are different terms and one should not mix these things. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, what I'm talking about is to look at the broad picture, not look at it from like a missionary point of view, that we are out there to tell them you are wrong and we have the right religion and you have to believe in us in order to be saved. Now, I will quote something from Mahmoud Ayyub. He has written a book, Christian-Muslim Relations. And he said that interfaith is as old as Islam itself. Okay? And he gives example from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So he said when the Prophet ﷺ first received revelation, he went to his wife Khadija, right? And he had doubt. There's no question about it. Yeah. Who did she take him to? Waraka bin Nawfal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he said that look at the two verses from the Quran. Okay, I didn't look at those verses in the light of what he had written, but now I'm looking at it. So he mentions Surah Nal, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِكَ إِلَّا رِجَالًا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِمْ فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And a similar verse, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا قَبْلَكَ إِلَّا رِجَالًا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِمْ فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And he said that this verse, his explanation, that the Prophet ﷺ is being told that if you are in doubt about the revelation, you can go to people of other faith. You know, the Christian, he said it refers to the Zikr refers to Ahlul Kitab, that they can confirm the veracity of your message. Then he gave the example, which we all know, that in the 9th year after Hijrah, actually not 9th year after Hijrah, yes, the delegation from Najran came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They stayed in the Masjid al-Nabawi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were guests of the state. They were allowed to even worship. And when they left, the most important thing that from my aspect was that the Prophet sent Ubaidullah bin Jarrah as Aminul Ummah.
Yeah.
Why would he send him? Did he send him to force them to become Muslims? No. So I think that Aminul Ummah, we are the Amanaul Ummah now. This amana, this trust has been given to us. That if you're living in a society where the majority is Muslims, you are the Amin of Ummah. You have the book of Allah, you have the absolute truth. The least we can do is to convey the message to them in a way that they don't feel humiliated or insulted.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Salim. Now the next point is, and by the way, this will be inshallah second last or last question, inshallah. The criticism which we are getting these days, that once you have an interfaith, and as you are saying that predominantly it's my responsibility to convey the message to the people of other faith when they will come and visit the mosque. Um, the approach is different, but there are people who will say that, see, in interfaith you have to compromise a lot, and at the same time you don't know the fine line, and many a times you, maybe you, Dr. Salim Khanani, after studying so much, you will know what's the fine line, but the people who are with you, the sincere Muslim people, but they might not be as knowledgeable as you are, they might not know that fine line, and next time they want to do something by themselves, they might even cross that fine line. Because it's a matter of the, as we said, faith. So what do you think, should we have a classes in our community separately, that those brothers and sisters who are interested in interfaith work take these courses, how to indulge in interfaith work? Maybe people like you and others who have indulged in this work for a long time should teach them, because I know that unfortunately imams, we are very lazy to do to involve ourselves in these kinds of work, and the people who have a passion of doing interfaith work, many a times they might not be as knowledgeable like you. So do you think we should have classes or anything, a training program where we can help that finding a right balance?
I think it's a very important, and I would say the most question that I also faced when I started out.
Dr.
Okay, I
Salim,
was
can you
very
repeat it? You
knowledgeable.
can
But all I
repeat
can say
again
is
what
that
you
when I
said?
studied Islam, I said that the question that you have asked, the critical question, and it's
Yeah.
something that I also faced when I started this thing. In fact, when I started studying Islam, my question to myself was, why am I a Muslim? Why am I not a Jew or a Christian or a Hindu or anything? So I studied Islam. I started studying it at an academic level. And there are different levels of studying the religion. The highest level, you can say, will be a comparative level. If you are really in the academics, you can, and you are want to be engaged in interfaith dialogue, you cannot just limit yourself to the Quran. Okay, I'm not saying in for guidance, Quran is the final word. I don't have to look at anything else for guidance. But when I'm engaged in dialogue, I need to know what they
People of other
believe.
faith,
I
obviously, you
need to
need
know
to know
what their
them. Yeah.
belief, and I need to know
Yeah.
what are the discrepancies in their books. And I will quote a hadith here: "Hadithu an Bani Israel." Okay, you can quote people of Bani Israel, and Ibn Kathir has mentioned it that if the Quran confirms something, you confirm it. If the Quran rejects something, you reject it. And if the Quran has remained silent about something, you remain silent. So the first doubt that I want to dispel, first perception is that we are not having interfaith to compromise. There's no compromise on the fundamentals of my religion. If somebody says that it is okay to worship an idol, I will say no. It's not a fine line. It's a defined line for me that I will not make any compromise. Tell me, I have to listen to them as well. Because we are engaged in people who are qualified, highly
Yeah.
educated people. And actually, there are many highly motivated people. Now, I will tell you something that I don't invite everybody to these programs, Imam. And I have received criticism why open it to everybody.
Hmm.
And the reason is exactly as you mentioned, that everybody can understand the methodology of interfaith, and people can easily misunderstand and think that we are compromising. And similarly, when people are coming from the other faith, they are PhDs and masters and doctors and engineers and rabbis and all that, you know. But they want to know, some of them have doubts about their own religion. And when they hear about the Quran, we can say, okay, so this is what the Torah says. Like, for example, we had a discussion about who was the Zabi. This was another topic. They asked me to come and talk from the Quran. And I gave them example from the Torah that your Torah says that Ibrahim alayhi salatu was saying, take your son, your only son, and then comma, Isaac, comma, wherever. And I said, you believe that who was the first son of Abraham? They say Ishmael. So I said, how can Allah say that take your son, your only son, and then comma, Isaac. and then it is followed by
Dr. Salim. I, Dr. Salim. Dr. Salim, can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I can hear you now.
I can hear you.
Yeah. So, Dr. Salim.
Okay.
Um, so, Dr. Salim, you were saying something. Can you hear me still? Can
Go
you
ahead.
hear? Is still there? Dr. Salim, some people say in our masjid, whether it's WIC or ISDW. So let's take both the masjids. They say that we invite, as you were saying, very selected people. As you were saying, that I don't know whether these people will be open-minded and they will take a right message or wrong message. But at the same time, how can we invite? How can we have an open to all interfaith event if it's worth it to have that? Can you answer it briefly?
Okay. You have to look at the positive and the negative. And if something has a greater harm, you avoid it. You taught me in the principles of fiqh,
I know that will
that
come.
you don't want somebody to spoil the entire program. And I have had this thing, we were doing tafsir of the Quran one day, and some non-Muslims ended up coming. And we happened to be discussing Surah Al-Ma'idah. And we were discussing, and somebody said, "No, brother, no, this is wrong," and all that. If you like wisdom, if you like hikmah, you can spoil the whole program. It has taken me several years to develop a group of people who can now understand the methodology of the interfaith dialogue that I'm engaged in. And again, I say I'm not inviting people to tell them you are wrong and I'm right. This approach will not work. You have to prepare them. You have to convey your message. Bil hikmati wal moizatil hasana. This is what the Quran is telling me to do that.
Yeah. Don't you think, Dr. Salim, that everything have its place? So for that, maybe for an hardcore dawa, there should be some people not at the interfaith level, at an individual level. There is a need for that, and at the interfaith, at the management of the masjid level, the representatives of the Muslim community, there's more need of what you are saying, and there's a need for every aspect of it. Do you think that?
No, I absolutely agree with you, and I do acknowledge, understand, acknowledge that there is a need to have a formal program where people can be trained.
Yeah.
And it has been a deficiency on my part as well. I'm not a full-time imam. I'm not full-time into it. So
You are
I'm
more
not
than
able to
full-time
devote
imam,
so
by
much
the
time.
way.
Well, this is a serious thing. And when you want to put together an interfaith program, you don't want just only Muslims.
Yeah.
You want to invite the Christians and Jews as well to come up with a
Yeah.
program, broad-minded people who will be willing to have a discussion. This is actually happening, that when the Jews are inviting us, they give us breakout rooms. We break out into different sessions, and on each table there is a Muslim, there is a Christian, there is a Jew. But again, this is done at a very high intellectual level. So you really
Yeah.
need people who are very committed, who are open-minded. Now, the other dimension of interfaith, Imam, is related to mu'allafatu qulubuhum. And I will give you one example. And sometimes, as I said, people ask me, what have you achieved? That Santa Barbara, a few years ago, two Muslim, a couple Muslim couple was blamed for an act of terrorism. They were both killed, so we never got to hear their side of the story. But the media was after the Muslims are terrorists. So we arranged a program in front of the city hall. There were more non-Muslims than Muslims who had come from my interfaith group, and they spoke and they
Yeah.
supported us. The only reason is because they knew us. If we are hiding in the closet, people will not know us. But when we engage in a dialogue, they can say, okay, these are also intelligent, educated people.
Smart people, yeah. That's why they
They are
say
also
there's
human
a
beings
famous
just like
saying
us.
that if you're not on the
But they are
table, you are
thinking.
at the table,
They are also
right?
acting.
Yeah. No,
That's right.
Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Salim. And
So I think
that's
that
the
these are
last
also, there are
question.
certain other issues.
Yeah. Yes, Dr. Salim.
What I was going to say is that there are contemporary issues. Which are not exactly related with the religion that we understand, but these are social issues, like the political issues. You know, we we are living in America. We are faced with these issues as much as Jews and Christians and non-believers are. And Islam has answered to some of those issues. We can actually tell them, okay, you have an issue with abortion here, you have an issue with homosexuality and other issues and all that, you have issues with depression. Our religion has something to offer to you. And many hospitals actually approach us about Muslim women, not just Muslim women, but non Muslim women from India, Pakistan, Arab countries. When they are pregnant, they demand that only a woman gynecologist should deliver their children. And they came to us and said, can you help us? Can you guide us?
Yeah.
Only if you are known in the community, then they will approach you. So I think outside of the religion, there are social and political issues where our involvement is very, very important. I think that is
Absolutely
also part
important.
of the interfaith.
So, do you think, Dr. Salim, now I will ask you a loaded question and you'll end, inshallah. So, do you think that if you will be asked to teach a seminar, and I can help you with that, but I won't lead it. So, you have to lead that because I am preoccupied with many other academic projects. Um, with both the masajid having, they can have their both outreach programs independently, but both these masajid would select few individual, both brothers and sisters, both WIC and ISDW, and we can ask other masajid, and we can train a group of brother and sister that see these are the things in Aqidah, these are the things in fine line. You don't compromise on these things, and this is how you do interfaith work. This is how you connect to hospitals and churches and synagogues, and this is the etiquettes, and this is and so on and so forth. Would you able to do something like this of making more Salim Khanani in our community? Can you do that?
I will be happy to participate, but I think that in order to have a very successful program, you really need people who have studied this topic. I have learned on the fly. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I've not sat in a madrasa, not studied Islam in a seminary. I've not studied interfaith in a seminary. You know, I've kind of learned by practicing. And I think you need people who have spent more time. Like my son went to Harvard Seminary. He did masters in Islamic studies, but his focus was Muslim-Christian relations. And there are people, there are his teachers, who know more about it. I don't know much about Christianity. I don't know much about Islam as well. So I will be happy to participate, but I think Dr. Lazuni is an excellent resource. I'm not joking. Brother Stephen Shakir. We can tap into the experience of all of these people. Yasir Najjar. My methodology is not the absolutely right methodology. So I think that we need to
Yeah.
sit down seriously, involve
Yeah.
people from outside, maybe people you know of, and then all of us together, we can certainly put something together for people who are really committed to this dawa work. It's a dawa work. It's not an interfaith to bow our head and say, now let me, sorry to interrupt, take some time. When the Prophet said, Lakum dinokum waliyadin, okay, it was not an approval. Now, sometimes people think that he was approving. He was not approving. He was simply saying that it is possible for Muslims and non-Muslims to coexist so long as our religion is accepted. And Mahmoud Ayub
Yeah.
actually mentioned that the process not force non-Muslims to become Muslims. He wanted them to acknowledge that Islam was a religion, that Muhammad ﷺ was the prophet of Allah, and Quran is the last book of Allah.
Mm.
So this is, I
Very
think,
true.
an important point as that this is what I want to do when I'm meeting with them, that I'm a Muslim and Islam is my religion. It's the right religion. It's one of the religions, if you want to say, that's I will accept it. We can coexist together. But there are my fundamentals, there are my principles, which I will never, never, never deviate, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Salim. May Allah reward you immensely for joining us. By the way, Dr. Salim Khanani will be teaching in the month of November the tafsir of Surah Maryam and Surah Taha from a Judeo-Christian perspective. So it will be very interesting, inshallah. You'll get more details in our email and our WhatsApp group messages, inshallah. Dr. Salim, Jazakallah khairan for joining us tonight. May Allah reward you and your family, inshallah. And I hope that, inshallah, we were going to benefit from you in the upcoming classes, inshallah.
Jazakallah khairan, and have a very safe trip. My teacher will miss you, but need to meet with your parents, and may Allah protect you and your family and bring you back to us safely, and bring some good book for me.
Inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan.
Wa iyyak.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.